The British East India Company was doing everything imaginable to dry out the entire subcontinent. And the land that they were leaving dry and parched was now ironically the perfectly fertile ground for one tiny spark to become a raging firestorm. Leading this drive was a policy, a devious policy, and it was imposed by him, Lord Dalhousie. If a ruler died without a son of his own blood, never mind the sons that he had lawfully adopted as custom and faith allowed, his kingdom, as per Dalhousie's twisted policy, did not pass to his family. It passed instead to the company. They called it the Doctrine of Lapse. Satara, Jaipur, Sambalpur, Nagpur, Jhansi, one by one ancient thrones went dark. Now, this wasn't on account of war, mind you. It was done clerically, using stamped paperwork. And then came Awadh. Awadh was a kingdom that hadn't even lost its king. In 1856, the company simply woke up and decided its ruler governed badly and took the whole province anyway, with nothing more than just an announcement. Now, for every dispossessed prince, there were thousands of dispossessed farmers who never made it to the history books. New revenue systems demanded taxes were paid in cash, mind you, not crop, due to be paid to the company, irrespective of whether that monsoon came or not. Land that had fed families for generations were auctioned off with one single bad season, often to money lenders who had never once touched a plough in their lives. Debt would now become the new landlord of rural India. Now, the East India Company had built itself an army. This wasn't to defend the land or its people. To the contrary, it was to ensure that the company's rules and rulings and doctrines were implemented across the land without any challenge. British officers gave the orders, but the men who marched, who guarded the treasuries, who bled and died under a flag that wasn't even their own, those were the sepoys, Indians, sons of the very villages the company was bleeding dry at that very moment. A sepoy could serve 20 years, fight in every campaign asked of him, and still stand a full rank below a British boy fresh off the boat from Manchester. He had given the company everything he had, and the company had made sure that he never once forgot his place. And now there was a rifle, the new Enfield, and more vexingly, a cartridge that had to be bitten off before loading. Word spread through the barracks that the grease sealing the cartridge was made from the fat of cows and pigs. To a Hindu sepoy, that was his god in his mouth. To a Muslim sepoy, that was his faith defiled. Every sepoy who heard it, true or not, it was the final proof of something that they had already begun to suspect. In the company's eyes, they were tools, instruments that the company could load, use and dispose without a care. By the spring of 1857, every princely court, every mortgage farm, every barracks in northern India was holding its breath around the same quiet question. Not if, but when. The answer did not come from a general. It didn't come from a palace or a prince or a plan. It came from one soldier in one cantonment who decided the waiting was over. You've heard of Mangal Pandey, right? Whose name is inseparable from the mutiny of 1857. Now, the mutiny in full force started in Meerut. Mangal Pandey was not stationed in Meerut, though. He was in Barrackpore, and it was his courageous actions a full 6 weeks before what followed in Meerut that lit the fuse that would eventually become the firestorm that we spoke of. Mangal Pandey walked onto the parade ground, musket loaded, calling his own regiment to rise. When a British officer came for him, Pandey fired. When they surrounded him, he turned the barrel on himself rather than surrender to them. He survived the wound. He would not survive that court-martial. On April 8, 1857, they hanged him. 10 days early because the company was already afraid of what his name might become. And they were right to be. 6 weeks later, on May 10, 1857, in Meerut, the garrison town that the company should have been watching all along, 85 sepoys of the Bengal Light Cavalry refused to bite that new cartridge. For that, they were stripped of their uniform, shackled in irons, and marched straight to prison. Their comrades watched silently. The next evening, those silent comrades broke them out, and they didn't stop there. They turned their weapons on their own officers. By nightfall, the garrison at Meerut was no longer a British garrison. And the sepoys did not stay only in Meerut. They rode through the night straight for Delhi towards an old man who had never asked to be a symbol of anything. Bahadur Shah Zafar was 81 years old, the last Mughal emperor, in name only, a pensioner of the company living inside the Red Fort, writing poetry that no one really cared for. The sepoys rode in and asked him to lead them. He hesitated at first. He was old. He had no army of his own. He had every reason to say no. But He said yes. And in that single word, a mutiny in one garrison became something that the company had never once prepared for. A war with an emperor at its head. From Delhi it spread to Kanpur, where Nana Sahib raised the flag of revolt, to Jhansi, where a young Rani would soon refuse to hand over a kingdom to anyone. This was no longer a mutiny in the ranks. Sepoys, farmers, nobles, the dispossessed, and the merely furious, all of them rising at once in places that the company had never once imagined capable of rising together. By the time the British understood the scale of what they were facing, half of northern and central India was already on fire. But this was never just a barracks revolt. It was this land's people, for the first time, rising against the same empire at the same time for the same reason. India would spend the next 90 years finishing what started here. And this wasn't a mutiny. This was the first war for independence. Have you ever heard of a harem girl rising to sit on a throne? Let me tell you about Muhammadi Khanum. She wasn't born to a throne. Nowhere close, actually. As a girl in Faizabad, she was sold into the royal harem as an attendant, trained in etiquette, poetry, and music. Groomed, basically, to serve. To rule was not even a distant, unrealistic dream. But destiny often flows in mysterious ways. Somewhere along the way, Nawab Wajid Ali Shah noticed her. Nawab Wajid Ali Shah just happened to be the 11th king of Awadh. She became his wife. She would no longer be Muhammadi. They would now call her Begum Hazrat Mahal. In 1856, the British took her husband's kingdom without firing a single shot. Misgovernance, they called it. Wajid Ali Shah accepted his pension, accepted his exile, and left for Calcutta without any resistance. He also left without his Begum, Hazrat Mahal. She refused to go with him. She stayed in Lucknow with her son, determined to claim what was rightfully hers and her son's. When the revolt broke out in 1857, she immediately raised her 14-year-old son Bidris Qadr to the throne of Awadh herself and took the regency in his name. There was a famous saying that year: the people belong to God, the land belongs to the king. The command, however, belongs only to the queen. She reorganized the army herself. Cavalry, artillery, infantry, coordinated like it had never been before. She financed the fortification of Lucknow's defenses out of her own treasury and gathered 180,000 troops to hold her city. And she did not command meekly from behind its walls. At the Battle of Alambagh, she rode at the head of her army on an elephant straight into the line of fire. Even the Times of London, her own enemy's newspaper, wrote that she showed greater strategic sense and courage than all her generals put together. By May, her forces had taken Lucknow. British officers, families, and officials, all of them barricaded inside the residency under siege, while a former attendant girl commanded an army outside its walls. She rode with her generals. She planned the assaults herself. For months, Lucknow belonged completely to her. But it did not last. Reinforcements came, and then came the betrayals, backstabbing men from her own camp. By March 1850, the residency was relieved and Lucknow was now falling. But she did not surrender. She fled, first to Faizabad, still fighting, still gathering whatever soldiers would still follow her. And when even that was not possible, she crossed over into Nepal with 100,000 people who would rather follow her into exile than stay behind under British rule. In November, Queen Victoria issued a proclamation. Generous words, promising tolerance, formally taking India from the company to the crown. Hazrat wrote to her enemy. She reminded her of every treaty that had already been broken, every kingdom that had already been stolen, every prince who was pensioned or killed, and asked the Queen of England one question that no one at Windsor would ever have an answer for. If your intentions are so honorable, why not simply give us back our country? If that is what our people want, they never answered. She spent what remained of her fortune caring for the people who had followed her into exile. And then she died in Kathmandu in 1879. 200 miles away, while Hazrat Mahal was still holding Lucknow, another woman was standing guard in Jhansi, close enough to a queen that soon no one would be able to tell which one of them was about to die for the other.